Hello, and welcome to My Week in Baseball. I'm your host, Phil Estruth Harrison. You're listening to Season 2, Episode 10. All episodes are now available in both video and podcast format at myweekinbaseball.com. And thank you, as always, to Rose Petal Studios for the artwork and logos created especially for this show and website. You'll find Rose Petal Studios on Instagram at rosepetal_studios. Also, thanks to Brunjo Productions in Nashville for our intro music. Learn more at brunjo.com. Well, today we'll talk about unexpected standings in the American League East, what Luis Arraez needs to do to finish batting 400, Arizona reliever Kevin Ginkel and his strange antics, whether the Tigers and/or Angels will be buyers and sellers at the trade deadline, and a trivia question involving a formerly famed baseball dynasty. Of course, we'll also have a timely limerick. So let's get right to it. Okay, I'm going to begin by reading you the current standings in the American League East as of today, July 22, 2023. Here are the standings in the American League East. New York Yankees, Boston Red Sox, Toronto Blue Jays, Tampa Bay Rays, and Baltimore Orioles. Does that sound right? Does that sound usual? Because I just read them in reverse order. The Yankees are in last place. The Orioles are tied with the Rays for first place. It's terrific. And so that leads us in today's trivia question. When was the last time that the Yankees finished a season in last place? Was it, I'll give you some choices. Was it 1950, 1970, 1990, or 2000? We'll have the answer for you with a little more information later in the show. Next, a quick Luis Arraez update. I've been doing this now for the past several episodes. So coming into today, again, July 22nd, Luis Arraez has cooled off. He is now hitting just 373, and he still leads the league in hits, batting average, of course, and on-base percentage. His on-base percentage is a whopping .423. I mean, that's what you expect maybe from the league's best home run hitter, and that is not Luis Arraez. So, wow, he's having a terrific year. Now, he's hitting 373. The Marlins have played 99 games, and in those 99 games, Luis Arraez has 359 at-bats, which projects to a little under 600 at-bats for the season. I actually did the math myself, if my math is accurate, and if Arraez plays all the rest of the remaining games, which he certainly might not. But he projects to having 587 at-bats for the season. So if he got exactly 587 at-bats, he would need 235 hits, over 200 hits, 235 hits to finish with a batting average of exactly 400. Well, he's got 134 hits right now, so he needs just over 101. And he actually might need a few less than that if he doesn't play all the remaining games, but he needs right around 100. We're going to say 101 hits in his remaining 228 at-bats. He would have to hit 443 the rest of the way to finish the season at 400. So it's pretty unlikely, but it's still exciting to follow him. He is 45 points ahead of the next closest player, the next closest hitter, and that's Ronald Acuna Jr. of the Braves. So Arraez should easily win the league batting title and the MLB batting title. And it's exciting to watch. I hope he does as well as possible, but I don't think he's going to hit 443 the rest of the way. Next up, from my friend and fantasy baseball rival, David Hall, comes this tidbit with credit to MSN.com. Little-known Diamondbacks reliever Kevin Ginkel made a name for himself recently, and not in a good way. He got extremely fussy about the Brave star, who we just mentioned, same Brave star, Ronald Acuna Jr., who's number 2 in the league, number 2 in baseball and hitting right now. He got fussy about Acuna taking a big lead off of third base. The bases are bigger. Runners are being a little more aggressive this year. There are limits on the number of times you can throw over. It's really not surprising to see runners taking big leads. And Acuna is a great base runner and a certified MLB star, which I cannot say the same for Kevin Ginkel. Anyway, Ginkel takes exception to Acuna taking a good-sized lead off of third base. So he saunters over to the base, waving his arms, and it looks like he's motioning. He's motioning like this. If you're watching on YouTube, it looks like he's motioning for Acuna to come towards him, which seems a little odd. And he's saying something. He's yelling at him. And I'm trying to lip read as I look at the replays of this on Twitter. It looks like he might be saying, "Come here," which would fit with the hand motions, or maybe "come on," or you'd think he would really be saying "get back," but it doesn't look like he's saying "get back." You'd think, I would expect him to say "get back" and kind of be pushing his hands away, like "get back to the base," but instead it's more like a challenge, like "come here" kind of thing. Whatever he's saying, I don't know for certain what he's saying. And is this a disengagement when he's walking over? Does this count as a timeout? I don't think so, but it's very strange. So he walks all the way back to third base, forcing Acuna back to third base. Acuna stands on the bag for a brief moment, and as soon as Ginkel begins walking back to the mound, Acuna starts to take his lead again. Maybe not quite as big a lead, but pretty close. Anyway, this may be kind of a Zen thing or a yin-yang thing, because Ginkel gets his comeuppance on the very next pitch. He throws the ball in the dirt. It gets by the catcher, and Acuna easily scores standing up. It wouldn't have mattered if he'd had a big lead or if he'd been standing smack on the bag. He scored easily, and Acuna gives Ginkel a look as he crosses the plate, which to me looks like he's not saying any words that I can tell, but it looks like a, "Hey, what's up, man? What are you doing? What was that all about?" Which is totally appropriate. It was weird. I think Ginkel needs to talk to his coaching staff. If he's worried about runners taking big leads, maybe they need a play to throw over to third base, or maybe they need some other kind of strategy. What are we going to do when a runner on third takes a big lead? But this thing about kind of challenging the runner and walking over to him in a very aggressive way, it was very strange. Didn't look good for Ginkel. Didn't look good for the Diamondbacks. The coaches in the dugout looked very surprised. Anyway, enough on that. But again, thanks to my friend David Hall for hooking me up with that information. Next up, Tigers news. Will the Tigers be buyers or sellers at this season's trade deadline? You could call this trade deadline news. Well, going into July 22, the Detroiters had a record of 44 wins and 53 losses. They're 9 games, currently 9 games under 500 as of this broadcast across 99 games played. And so you wouldn't think they would be buyers. The thing is that the American League Central is so horrible that the first place team is only a couple of games above 500. So it doesn't really take much to get back in the running for the division title. However, for the Tigers to even finish at 500, and that's really, they're 9 games under right now, and to even consider the chance that you might get into the playoffs, they're going to have to finish at least at 500. They're not winning the division below 500, I don't think. It's going to be close. Anyhow, in order to finish at 500, the Tigers would need to play 9 games over 500, since they're 9 games under right now, 9 games over 500 the rest of the way. And that's with 65 games to go. That means in those 65 games, they'd have to win 37 while losing only 28. That's a 569 winning percentage, which is about the same as the Houston Astros or almost up to the Tampa Bay Rays, two of the better teams in the American League. So in order for the Tigers to even have a shot at 500, they've got to play as well the rest of the season as two of the best teams in the league. So pretty unlikely. So that brings into question, will the Tigers be buyers? I wouldn't think so. Maybe they make some kind of marginal pickup if they think they can get a good deal on a bat. It seems unlikely. More likely, they'll either do nothing or they might trade, I would think, some pitching. The most likely candidates to be traded are starters Eduardo Rodriguez and Michael Lorenzen, which are Detroit's two most reliable starters this year, and maybe a reliever, Alex Lang or Jose Cisnero. Those guys could also go. Lang and Cisnero as relievers have a little bit of team control left, so they might be appealing. They're not just a rental. Rodriguez and Lorenzen are rentals. So Lorenzen's contract is up at the end of the year. Rodriguez actually has 3 years and $49 million left on his contract, but he has an opt-out clause that lets him get out of his contract and go back into free agency at the end of this season, 2023. And he will almost certainly do so. He's having arguably his best year ever. It might not even be arguably. He's having a very good year. I guess the good news here for the Tigers, if they were to trade these guys, and even if they weren't, at the end of the season, they're going to have a lot of payroll freed up. So Miguel Cabrera is in his last season. He's making $32 million this year. Oh, now he does have a vesting option that could automatically trigger and bring him back to the team next year for $30 million next year. That only happens, though, if he finishes in the top 10 of MVP voting. Not too likely. Anyway, Cabrera's $32 million will come off the books. Eduardo Rodriguez, who I've just talking about this year, is making $14 million, and he has 3 years remaining. But since he's likely to opt out if the Tigers don't trade him, even if they do, that $14 million comes off the books. That $49 million over 3 years. Michael Lorenzen was making more of a bargain level, $8.5 million, but that comes off the books. And Matthew Boyd, who pitched okay a bit here and there, but is injured again. He was making $10 million. His $10 million comes off the books. So it's $32 million for Cabrera, 14 plus for Erod, 8.5 for Lorenzen, 10 million for Matthew Boyd. That's a pretty good chunk of money coming off the books. And going into next season, going into 2024, the only big contract left will be Javier Baez, who's making $22 million a year. Now, Baez can also opt out, but he won't. He's owed another $98 million over the next 4 seasons, and his bat has just deteriorated. He's not the hitter he was projected to be. I think that the Tigers thought they were getting when they signed him. You know, he's a pretty decent shortstop defensively. He makes some great, amazing plays for sure. He also occasionally throws the ball away on more conventional plays. So overall, I think a good fielder, but a subpar hitter for a good team. He really needs to be hitting in the bottom third of the order, and the Tigers just aren't there yet. But he won't be opting out of his contract. He is not at a point with his hitting, especially, to make him attractive to other teams. Anyway, this brings me back to, will the Tigers trade or not? They might. So they might trade Eduardo Rodriguez. They might trade Michael Lorenzen. Currently, Rodriguez has a 5-6 record, 5 wins, 6 losses. Lorenzen has a 6-5 record. So they're exactly 500 in their win-loss record at 11-11 between them. If the Tigers did trade them, I don't have a strong idea for who would replace them. They're going to need to replace those innings. That, to me, would be one reason they might keep them. I think what we've got at AAA Toledo is limited. You could give some more innings to Joey Wentz. Reese Olson will probably get more innings, but he's already in the rotation. I think they would have trouble filling those innings. But even if they do, the replacement level players are going to be significantly worse. So if you're thinking that these two guys pitch the rest of the season, maybe they've got 20 to 24 starts between them the rest of the year. If they were both pitching, maybe they go 500, maybe they go a few games above 500 if you've got Rodriguez and Lorenzen. Lorenzen was in the All-Star game. But even if you do, the Tigers are not going to become a 500 team. And maybe they play close to 500 the rest of the season, but they're not going to finish the season at 500, given that they're currently 9 games under. If they were to replace those pitchers, the replacement level, let's say, again, you had 20 to 24 starts, somewhere in that range remaining. What are they going to go? They're not going to go 500. Replacement level, are they going to go like 8-16? Are they going to go like, 6-12 or something like that? I mean, they're going to be replacement level pitchers. You're going to be at least 10 games below 500, I think. With those replacement level pitchers, something like that, 8-10 games below 500. So that would really hurt the Tigers' record going into the end of the season. I projected them at the start of the season to win 72 games. That would be 72-90, which would put them 18 games under 500. Right now, they're 9 games under 500. I actually think if they keep Rodriguez and Lorenzen, they will finish a little better. They might finish somewhere in the 6 to 10 games below 500. If they trade those two, I think the wheels could fall off. I don't think we've got enough innings from enough decent pitchers to play competitively. And, our hitting's kind of a mixed bag. The pitching's really what's kept us going. So I think they could fall way below 500 if they traded both those guys, and if they traded Lang and Cisnero from the bullpen. Let's say they really went all out. They got some offers they couldn't refuse. The Tigers would tank. I think they would really collapse the final part of the season, and I don't even think they'd win 70 games. I think you're talking about maybe the high 60s if something like that were to happen. I don't expect it to happen. I'm going to think they trade 1 or 2 of those guys, at least, of the 4 names that I mentioned. Hopefully they get some decent returns, some guys that could help in the next year or 2, but I wouldn't expect any big splashy moves. So kind of lukewarm on it. I kind of hope they keep Rodriguez and Lorenzen just to finish with a respectable season. We will see what happens. Next, will the Angels be buyers or sellers? In fact, I'm wearing an Angels shirt today, and if you're on YouTube, I'm just holding it up so you can see it. It's actually an Ohtani shirt. It has Ohtani's number on the back. Well, the Angels are an interesting case because they have a legitimate shot at making the playoffs. It's still not great because there's a lot of competition. They're currently, going into today, 2 games over 500 with a record of 50-48. They're only 4 games out of the wild card in the American League, which is close enough to think that it's doable. They're neck and neck with the Mariners, who are also hovering just barely above 500, but they're going to have to play better than the Mariners, the team that they're just kind of neck and neck with, and also the 3 teams that are currently above them in those wild card standings. And those are the Yankees. Even though they're in last place, they actually have a pretty decent record. The Red Sox were in second to last place, and the Blue Jays. But those teams that American League East is so strong, those 3 teams all have decent records. All of them would be in first place in the American League Central. So the Angels are going to have to outperform the Mariners and those 3 teams above them, Yankees, Red Sox, Blue Jays, all of them, to get in. So that's the hard part. I could see them, playing a little better. Mike Trout is out with a injury to his hamate bone in his wrist. He seems to be making good progress, so they need to get that bat back. Mickey Moniak has been hitting the ball like gangbusters. He's hitting something like 335 and batting near the top of their order. He's been a really pleasant surprise. I think the Angels will make some small moves to improve the team. I don't think it's going to be anything drastic. I don't think that they have the farm system, from what I've heard, to really make any blockbuster deals, even if they wanted to. But they'll probably make some marginal improvements. I don't think they're going to trade Ohtani because I think they're going to be close enough to a playoff spot. And boy, I'd love to see them make the playoffs. Close enough to a playoff spot that they can't really justify the trade. And I don't know that they'd really get the return that they should for Ohtani. I think a year ago they could have, a year ago when he had a year and a half to go on his contract. But now when he's a rental, for six or 8 weeks, something like that, I don't know they're going to get the return they should get anyway. He brings people to the stadium. It's really exciting. It's the one fun thing. Well, Trout as well. But it's the one fun thing about being an Angels fan is watching Ohtani play. So my guess is they won't trade him, that they will stay in the race. I'm hopeful that they make it, but I think the odds are against them because it's going to be really hard to play better than those 3 teams above them. Even if they finish, they're 2 games over 500 right now. Maybe they play a little better. Maybe they finish 5 or 6 games over 500, but that's going to be, they're 4 games out right now. So they would have to, they'd have to finish at least 6 games over to be kind of in a tie for the wild card. So it's possible. I mean, that's not a lot better than they're playing now, but they will have to play a bit better. Trout coming back will help. We'll see. I'm hopeful for the Angels. I feel the odds aren't great, but they're close enough that you can kind of cross your fingers and hope they make it. So next up, today's Limerick, our baseball limerick that we have every episode. This time it is a tribute to the trade deadline. So here we go. Deciding to trade or not puts the GM squarely on the spot for postseason success or painful regress. Will it lead to more tickets bought? And now the answer to today's trivia question. I'll repeat the question for you. When was the last time the Yankees finished in last place? Was it 1950, 1970, 1990, or as recently as 2000? Well, the last time the Yankees finished in last place was in 1990. And I love this quote from RoyalsReview.com by writer Max Raper, when he says, quote, in 1990, when owner George Steinbrenner was banned from baseball and they fielded a laughably bad team full of free agent busts, minor leaguers from a depleted farm system, and Don Mattingly. Great quote about the 1990 Yankees. So that's the answer to today's trivia question, and it becomes our blast from the past. So today's blast from the past is those last place 1990 Yankees. They finished that year with a record of 67-95. Can you believe that? The Yankees losing 95 games? Wow. As a Tigers fan, that just sounds really pleasant. Anyway, that year they finished 7th in the American League East. So that was back before we had 3 divisions. Had the AL East, had the AL West. They finished 7th in the AL East. The manager to start the season was Bucky Dent, who Red Sox fans will remember. Anyway, they started the season with manager Bucky Dent. He went 18-31 with the team and then replaced him with Merrill. Sorry, I don't know this name. Not Merrill, Stump Merrill. Stump Merrill. They replaced Bucky Dent with Stump Merrill, who went on to compile a 1-loss record with that team of 49-64. So not a good season for the Yankees. Let's take a look at a few of those memorable players from that 1990 Yankees team. So I'm just going to read through some of these. Don Mattingly, of course, is the one name that you will know, but he did not have a particularly good year. Played 102 games with only 5 home runs, batted .256 with a .308 on base percentage. And he had an OPS plus of just 81. So nearly 20% below league average as a hitter, Don Mattingly. Yeah, what a year. And that was his age 29 season. So he must have had an injury playing only 102 games that year. Other names you might know, Steve Sachs, who I think of as being the second baseman for the Dodgers. But in 1990, he was the second baseman for the Yankees. He hit .260. He had an OPS plus of 80, so he's 20% below league average. Jim Leyritz played third base. He batted .257. He was 7% below league average. Trying to find anybody on the team who was actually above league average. Oh, their DH, Steve Balboni, who I do remember. I remember him playing for the Royals. Boy, that the Yankees would pick him up. Whew, I think that's one of those free agent busts we're talking about. Steve Balboni had over 300 at-bats. He batted .192. They gave him 300 at-bats, and he batted .192 with a .291 on base percentage. That is just awful. That is just awful. Interestingly, his offense production, though, total was only 6% below league average because he did hit 17 home runs, and that helped. But boy, that's whew. Their best offensive player was right fielder Jesse Barfield, who I think of as being on the Blue Jays. So I think this is this team of this collection of guys put together from other teams. Barfield was actually pretty decent. He hit 25 homers, batted .246, .359 on base percentage, .815 OPS, which was 27% above league average. So he was the best player. The other one who was above league average was Roberto Kelly in center field. Seems like I remember him playing for the Twins, but one of my listeners there could probably correct me if I'm wrong on that. He batted .285, and he was 6% above league average. So Roberto Kelly and Jesse Barfield were the two decent offensive players that year. Let's take a look at some of the pitching. So I'm going to go by the number of games started. The 31 games started, their most used pitcher was Tim Leary, age 31. He won 9 and lost 19 with a 4.11 ERA, pitched a little over 200 innings. So he wasn't horrible, but not a good team, and you don't really want him to be your ace. Dave LaPointe started 27 games, won 7, lost 10, 4.11 ERA. Again, not a horrible ERA. Andy Hawkins started 26 games. He won 5 and lost 12, 5.37 ERA, and he pitched over 150 innings for them. Chuck Carey, who I have never heard of, was 6 and 12 with a 4.19 ERA, and their number 5 starting pitcher, Mike Witt, who I believe at one time pitched for the Angels, was 5 and 6 with a 4.47 ERA. So not very impressive. Almost looks to me at a quick glance there that the hitting may have been worse than the pitching. Their closer was Dave Righetti, who had a 1-1 record, a 3.57 ERA, and let's see what we can find. He had 36 saves that year. Not real impressive, though. 473 FIP. That's fielding independent pitching. That's what his earned run average should have been based on the things he could control. So it looks like he got a little lucky. But Dave Righetti was their closer. Oh, and I have to mention this name just because it's such a great baseball name. Eric Plunk was on that team, the 1990 Yankees. Plunk for a relief pitcher. What a super name. He actually had a winning record. Almost about the best record on the team. 6 wins and 3 losses. Actually, the most wins on the team was a kind of swing man named Lee Gooderman, who won 11 games. But Eric Plunk, 6 and 3, no saves, 2.72 ERA. So he was their one good pretty good pitcher there. Anyway, that's a quick summary of the 1990 Yankees, the last Yankees team to finish in last place. And that is our blast from the past. So that's all for today, my friends. Join us next time because honestly, what can be better than talking baseball? As always, I'm your host, Phil Estruth Harrison. We'll see you next time on My Week in Baseball.